Judge Matt Whitaker, former acting U.S. Attorney General under Donald Trump, is with me now. Great to see you. First of all, just tell us what we're watching for in all of this. Can Hunter possibly get out of having to go to court and face trial in June?
Yeah, it's highly unlikely. All the arguments that Abby Lowell is making are about 80% accurate, and it sounds good when it's reported or in a newspaper article, but it actually, under the law, is not exactly accurate. I think the most important thing, though, Harris, that I'm watching is the 3 felony counts, and those 3 felony counts include not only failures to not file taxes, but also filing a false tax return. And so that's where the real hook is. And this argument that somehow the government needs to live up to its prior plea deal, remember, the judge rejected that. And so it is null and void and was contingent on the judge accepting the plea agreement. So I think that this, today is a procedural argument. I don't think it's going to be successful. And Hunter is ultimately going to have to face a jury in this case.
We have the counts against Hunter Biden. If we can pop those back up, they were on for quite a bit. And I just want to go through what you think. And you talked about, that filing, I guess you would call it a fake return. I mean, drill down on that.
Yeah, well, this obviously you have to, all Americans have to file a accurate tax return that it says what their income was and what their expenses were and then what their net tax. And so, as you look at all of this, I think those felony counts, and especially the false tax return, so he lied to the federal government to expense things that weren't expensible, some of the things you mentioned earlier, and then ultimately not pay taxes. And I think that is, probably the most serious crime that's alleged here.
Yeah, up to 17 years was what we're being told that he faces. Will follow it. I appreciate you filling in some of the gaps on what to watch for. Let's look at this. A New York judge, just added another hush, if you will, to Donald Trump's hush money trial. The judge imposed a gag order ahead of the April 15th trial date, only on Donald Trump, only on him. He said, quote, prior extrajudicial statements establish a sufficient risk to the administration of justice. That's a quote. The order does not cover statements against the judge or Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Former Assistant U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy is wondering why the gag order only applies to Trump. Let's watch.
There don't seem to be any inhibitions on the witnesses talking about Trump, and yet he's cracked down. He can't talk about them under circumstances where, he's running for president. I've always thought it was odd that you can clamp down on his speech, but everyone else that he's running against in the race can speak to their heart's content about his legal trouble.
Byron York went after this example of lawfare against Trump, arguing Bragg won office by promising to go after Trump. Well, don't all the guys on the left, isn't that like their jam right now? And he did, in fact, go after Trump, resurrecting an allegation that more responsible law enforcement agencies had declined to prosecute. Bragg came up with 34 felony counts against Trump, each with a maximum sentence of 4 years in prison, which theoretically would result to 134 years behind bars for the former president. Matt, as you look at this, why not put a gag order on not just Alvin Bragg, but any of these liberal district attorneys and Attorney General Letitia James? She loves to talk smack about Trump and how she's going to get him, quote.
She's been awfully quiet since the appeals court reduced that.
Didn't go their way.
On the mouth. But, that being said, I think these gag orders are very dangerous, as you can imagine, because you have someone that's running for president that now has to be very careful with how and what they comment upon. The First Amendment doesn't say, unless you're being prosecuted, then you can't speak. The First Amendment is fairly broad in its protection of our right to speak and speak our minds. And so I think this judge ultimately has got to be, tread very carefully. Obviously, the president is going to say what he wants to say, and these witnesses and others are going to say what they want to say about Donald Trump. I just think it's very anti-American to put a gag order on someone that is the leading candidate for one of the major parties.
So we have seen the former president say some things that have angered other judges before, talking about things that were, extracurricular, if you will, to the case. Is there something in particular that he might have said in this instance that triggered this judge and his gag order?
Yeah. So there has been this character, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that's been in and out of both the Department of Justice federally, and then the District Attorney's Office and Letitia James' office at the State Attorney General. And so I think that maybe it's directed to prevent, the highlighting of that individual, or potentially court personnel. But all of this, again, the president has a right to defend himself, and especially as the major candidate for the Republican Party, certainly has an ability to comment about these things so the American people understand the context. You mentioned, for example, these charges, the federal election charges that have been rejected by both the FEC and the Southern District of New York and Alvin Bragg's predecessor, that now somehow make this a felony, make it a 5-year, now 6-year statute of limitations because of COVID. It's the only way these charges were brought in the first place. I just think it's, that needs to be mentioned and spoke about, and make sure everybody understands the context.
Yeah, and just mentioning the fact that this DA is yet another one on the left who used Donald Trump's name to campaign. I mean, there's nothing wrong with bringing that in and then applying whatever gag order has to be applied equally and fairly. Matt Whitaker, always great to see you. Thank you.
Harris, good to see you again. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.